I'm Joyce Hazlerig of Joyharte, and welcome to Woolly Wednesday in the LivingFelt studio. And today I'll be making harvest flower mushroom crowns for y'all. So I'm a little bit of a flower child myself, a little bit of a Renaissance gal, and I hung out at the Renaissance Fair for many years. So I think that it's safe to say that these are definitely inspired by some of the crowns you might find at the Renaissance Fair. And if anybody who knows me, they know how much time I spent over there. So these are just really fun. I literally sat one afternoon, one day at the Ren Fair when it was cold and rainy, and I made a bunch of little flowers. I braided some wire together, and I put together a little crown many moons ago, and that has all come to this. First, I'll show you how to make the leaves from pre-felt that we have made before on this channel, and then we'll go on to showing you how to quickly wet felt a sweet little flower and show you how to do some mushrooms with Nepps. Then we'll make a little pumpkin. We're going to wrap some fairy lights with some wool and silk, and I'll show you how to braid the crown itself out of some raffia covered wire. You can add as many things as you want to it, or as little. You can make it into a spring crown, a summer crown. You can do a holiday crown if you want. We're gonna do an autumnal autumn crown, and it'll be lots of fun. I can't wait for y'all to assemble your crown with all of our little bits and pieces here, and you'll be excited to see how it comes together. Here's a few different options for you. So this one is just mostly mushrooms with a few little leaves. It's got fairy lights on it. So the fairy lights turn on like so. And this one is just a super simple. I found a couple of pine cones to add to it, and I love it. This one is more of a harvesty one, and this one has the fairy lights. It's actually a really long double strand of fairy lights, so this one almost just made itself. So I just put a few of the autumn colored leaves on here and a few very simple mushrooms to add something to it, and I like this one as well. The pre-felt leaves add just a bunch of interest to it. The next one we have is this classic red and white mushroom crown, and this one doesn't have fairy lights. So this one, it just has lots of little greenery. You can get some of this grapevine raffia wire to show through, and I love that. You could even hang little charms if you wanted from here. Just depend on how much they get caught in your hair. But you could add, other things to it. It's got some cool ribbons, but no fairy lights on this one yet. It's a very striking crown as well. So this is a crown that's kind of has a Christmas theme to it, and it's one of the older ones that I've made. And it's white mushrooms, white on white with white locks, and then just little touches of green and little touches of holly berries that I had. And you could also get these kind of things from a craft store. And the same thing, you could apply them onto your crown for a holiday theme. Today I'll be showing you how to make this one, which has a little bit of everything, which is why we're calling it the Harvest Autumn Crown. So we've got our fruit over here. We've got some pumpkins and some apples. We've got flowers. We have to have mushrooms, and we have our fall leaves. Oh, and we've got fairy lights. So we're going to be making these autumn leaves right here, and to do that I used the wet felted leaf tutorial that's on Woolly Wednesday a couple years back, and we did these beautiful pre-felts, and there's a couple of different directions you can go. Here is the autumn leaf kit, and then we also have the Decadence blends that are really good for that, and there's a designer pack with add-ins like Nepps and hankies and Angelina, all to end up with this beautiful pre-felt that you then cut your fall leaves out of. And of course you can make green ones, you can do them in any color you like, but this is a great start for your wet felted autumn leaves. So go ahead and make your pre-felt, and I'm going to show you how I cut out these little leaves. I like to do them just free form, but of course there's templates available with the wet felted autumn leaf kit that you can shrink down to appropriate size. I just find it easier to just cut the little freeform leaves and see where they take me. They just have to be vaguely leaf shaped. There's many ways to make leaves, and I'm going to show you how to attach these little wires to them and to even cover the wire so that you don't see the wire afterwards. So we have a green and I have this orange, and you can kind of use the shapes from the previous cut to kind of make your decisions. And I'm going to show you how I would start if I was starting on my pre-felt. So this is completely felted, completely dry, and ironed a little bit if you wanted it to be super flat and super thin. It's also really, really well felted. So that's good things to note before you start, just to make sure your pre-felt is very, very, very felted. So I'm just going to kind of go into a corner, start on a little corner of my pre-felt, and I like to give these guys a little bit of a tail for the leaf, almost like a spade shape. And then I'm just going to cut up. So I have a very basic kind of little spade shape right here. And then I'm going to show you that you can just kind of make these little cuts that are almost like a little Christmas tree going up to make kind of like a faux maple leaf, little scalloped edge. And you just kind of keep going however you wish until you feel like you've done it enough. Of course, there's always the chance you can go overboard, or you're like, oh, I don't like that, it kind of came out weird. But the more that you do it, the more you'll kind of get the hang of that. And from what I was saying about letting your next shape, so I have these two corners right here from cutting out that one, and that just looks like it's the perfect lead-in to just make this other one kind of match. So I'm just going to kind of zigzag my shape, come down here, and then make that the next little cut to come up here and cut that off, and have it like almost practically done for you. This one says to me like maybe a little bit of an oak leaf shape, so I'm just going to kind of come around, and the oak leaf has those kind of lobes on it, and they usually have about 6-7 little lobes on there. So kind of, you know, reference your reference pictures are important, of course, for leaf shapes. And then I'm just gonna like come back here and clean this one up a little bit. Go in, out. And I think I like it like that. What do you think? It looks pretty cute. Shall we do a green one? So the same thing, I've got these little corners to go by. So I'm going to start in on my little corner, and I'm going to make a little spade shape or a little heart shape. You can cut a little tail if you like. And that almost is super cute just by itself. I'm just going to kind of cut in, just do very little to this one, and kind of cut into the corners, making corners. Cut in to make just some little ridges and accentuate those little ridges. And you can see the white here is the silk from the Sherwood Decadence blend, and there's a little squiggle of hanky on here, so you can really get all of those really cool fibers that you've had hanging around and you don't know what to do with. Get them in there. So this one I think would make an excellent heart-shaped leaf, so I'm just going to come in here and kind of cut around. Going to kind of do a little bit of the heart shape, and there's a little bit of silk sticking up. And then once again, I think we just do very little to this, just kind of come into a little bit of the edges, and you've got this cute little tip right there, and then now you have your little leaf ready to go. You can make little aspen shaped leaves, or little, you know, oak leaves, little holly leaves if you're doing like a holiday themed. So this one's a really simple shape. So for attaching the wire to the leaves, you can use this like a stainless steel 24 gauge, or I have this covered wire. It's like the a thin, similar gauged wire covered in raffia. Anything will really do as long as it's kind of flexible. So I'm going to cut about, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches of wire. It doesn't have to be a really big piece. You just want it long enough that you can comfortably maneuver it and stuff. And I always find that if it's a little bit longer, you can cut things off, but it's when you get it short, it's always really short and hard to work. So I'm going to make a loop at the top, and you're just going to give this a little bit of a twist so that you're working with the wire with a little bit of a loop on top. And then you're going to turn it over onto the off side, the side that you didn't cover. If you did both sides of your pre-felt, then it doesn't matter. You can choose whatever side you want. I go just about halfway up the leaf. So I'm just going to lay a line of hot glue halfway up. And then I'm going to press the wire into the hot glue. I have a little bit of a skewer to help maneuver that. So you just want to press your wire down there. It's a little bit messy. And then I'm going to take a corresponding color of wool, and I'm going to press this into the hot glue. You'll find that almost immediately it's like it neutralizes, the wool neutralizes the hot glue, so you're actually able to do this part without too much fuss. You want to be a little bit careful because, as we know, hot things are hot. And then I'm going to just cut off whatever didn't stick on here. And it's not a super big deal. I just don't want to look at that bare wire on the back of my leaf. You're not going to be able to see it anyway. But now you've got this nice little covered leaf. So we'll do a green one right here. And I'll cut another little 5 or 6 inches of wire. Just like this. Make a loop. Turn my chosen leaf over, put the glue down. Safety first, just press that right into that hot glue. And now you have your nice covered leaf on a wire. When you're going to assemble your crown, you're going to want a fair amount of leaves, maybe like, no less than 8 or 9. Odd numbers are good because it kind of offsets things. So, choose like just a few leaves, and it's better to have too many than to have too few. So make sure that you make plenty for your crown. And you can choose, an assortment of greens and oranges, or light orange or light gold. Or if you're making more of a spring or holiday crown, you can choose your dark greens and things. You want it to be not quite random, but almost random, So I like different shapes and things. So I like to choose, maybe an oak leaf over here or a little heart-shaped leaf over there. So just mix and match. I'm going to be showing you how to make these really simple flowers for your crown, and we just used a little bit of lilac merino top and this decadence blend and a little silk hanky, and these are so simple. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to make a little template. This one is about 4 or 5 inches, and kind of take into account that it's going to shrink a little bit. So the smaller that your template is, this is just like a guideline to kind of show you how to lay it out. And it goes underneath the bubble wrap. And then I want to put down just a tiny bit of this hanky, which I'm going to cut. Put your silk hanky in the center, and then take your decadence blend. This one is the Sherwood, and you're just going to want to crisscross it just a little bit. We just want a little bit of this peeking out on our flower. And then I have my lilac right here, and just kind of from the center, you're going to pull just a little bit of wool and go in a circle as best you can, radiating the wool towards the center of the template. It's okay if it overlaps. That's gonna make your flower kind of give it those raggedy edges. You just want to do this just a little bit. These are really thin little flowers. They're kind of resemble like morning glories, and we do a lot of pulling on them. So that's probably enough. So this is just very, very thin layout, very, very just, you know, you can kind of feel it, and it's a little thinner on the edges, and it's all splayed out, radiating outwards from the center, which is a little different than kind of like your regular wet felt. So you're just gonna take your soap and make your water soapy. And I have my sprinkler. Wet it down and put your tulle or netting on top of this. I'm just going to proceed to wet felt in the usual manner. When you're felting, you're going to just lightly, you know, start lightly with a light pressure, kind of radiate outwards and kind of almost like pet it or stroke it in the direction that you want those petals to be in. Make sure that one side doesn't drift too far over. Otherwise you'll have kind of like that center little green or whatever you put in the center will kind of drift as well. And then just lightly felt it for 10 minutes or so. You can flip it over a couple of times. Make sure to, of course, peel up your tulle or your netting. You can also use a thin plastic. And then you're going to pull from the center, and you'll continue to kind of work it until you can feel that it is felted. I'm just going to cut off these little wispy bits. So by pulling it at this stage, it's already started to felt. It's not felted all the way by any means, but it's starting to felt around the edges. And this is because it's so thin that it's making that, it's holding together. Now, it's pretty fragile at this point, so you still want to keep working on it. And I might shock it a couple of times into some cold water, into some hot water, and then back to cold again. The hot water causes the fibers to open up, and the colder the water, it causes it to close. And at this point, when you do that, it toughens the wool, and it causes it to, you can actually pull on it quite a bit, like with a lot of your strength, and get those really cool fluted edges and stuff. And you could even go through and individually kind of find these little points and pull on these little points. With my thumb, just kind of finding that little center of where our silk hanky is, and I'm pulling around that. And that's also the strongest part of our flower, because all of the little pieces that we laid came over that, so it's a little bit thicker in the middle than it is on the edges. And in our next step, I'll show you how to put a little stamen into this. It's almost like a little morning glory or like hibiscus kind of type flower. It's just really cute and decadent. Delicate, not decadent. So just keep fussing with it. It's pretty much felted now. There's so many cool flower tutorials, so you can find, if you have some flowers that you've done previously, you can find them and add them to your crown, or you can make up new ones. There's just a lot of different things. So you could go just with the flowers, or you can add other things in there, and we'll be showing you those in a bit. So once you're finished with your flower, you're gonna wanna let it, rinse it out, put it in a little vinegar bath for a few minutes to get all the soap out and neutralize the soap. And then you're going to let it dry in this bell shape. I like to set up like a little jar or cup of chopsticks, and then you can stick them up there and let them all dry at the same time. They'll dry pretty quickly, and then you can always give them a little bit of an iron with a iron, or flat iron for your hair will also help dry them, or keep them, kind of keep the fluted edges and stuff. The number of flowers is up to you, of course, so I would probably go no fewer than 6, just to get like a good showing around there. And you can also mix and match your colors, or with the leaves and stuff. You just want it to look, nice and full. Once your flowers are dry, I'm going to show you how to make a simple stamen for the center of your flower, and also it will attach a wire that you can later use to attach to the crown. Cut about an 8 to 10 inch piece of wire. Like I said before, you just want enough that you can work with it and not have to worry about if it's going to end up as a really, really short piece. We're going to take some of this curls, like I have some curls that I dyed here, and I've got just a little bit, and I want to put them into the center of my wire, or just off center, and give it a little bit of a twist. So I'm just twisting that loop back on itself so that the curls are twisted inside of here. If you wanted to, you could take a little bit of a needle and felt right here at the base, just to hold everything down and hold it together. I have an awl here. I'm going to flip my flower inside out, put my finger right here, but don't stab yourself, just to find the center of that. And you just want to poke so that you have a kind of a big hole. Just making sure that I get both of the wires through the hole. All right. So you might want to put just a little bit of hot glue down here at the base where your wire, stamen, and flower all meet up. And you can twist the stem just a little bit more. When it has the glue, it won't be quite so floppy. This one has glue on it, this one doesn't. And this is our flowers. Another thing I like to make for the crowns are these mushrooms. So I've done mushrooms several different ways, and I will show you both ways. I made them this way with just a couple of little simple little white dots felted on top, and then I've made them this way with Nepps. And I'll show you my super secret, not so secret way of attaching these Nepps. To make these mushrooms, you're going to want some Bergschafter Maori batting, and then some core wool, of course some pliers, Nepps if you like, and 20 gauge floral wire. So I've cut the floral wire in half, and then I've bent it again into a little U, and this is going to form our 2 different mushrooms. I usually make a kind of a bigger one and a smaller one just for interest, and I like to put a loop at the top of my mushroom, and this kind of holds the top on. So I'm just going to make a little simple spiral and then bend it so that it's down. Simple spiral, and then I bend it around. And now you can take a little bit of your core. So I'm just gonna kind of get this to grab on to that little bit of a spiral. I just wrapped it around in a very simple little cocoon shape, and I can still feel that in there. And then I'm turning it upside down, and I've got this pen tool it's got 40 gauge spiral needles in here. And I'm simply gonna go right around here. You'll see me kind of bounce against that wire that's in this inside. So I just want to get that a little bit felted so that I have this kind of top to begin with. Let's go ahead and do that for the second side. I think the biggest thing about these mushrooms is to not let them get out of control. Try to keep them small because of course you don't want huge mushrooms, and mine, everything I make tends to get bigger before it gets smaller. So if you can make tiny little delicate mushrooms, they will be so cute on your crown. So we're gonna just let that hang out for a second, and then for the stem on this, I'm gonna use some of this mushroom colored Maori wool, and I just need just a little bit. And if you want, you can cover this with floral tape to give it a little bit of tackiness. I loves me some floral tape. And that'll keep your mushroom stem from sliding around. I'm just gonna wrap the whole darn thing too. And of course with floral tape, you just give it a little tug and it becomes tacky. It's amazing. It's one of the reasons why we love it. Just keep it flat, guide it all the way up. So I'm going to use some of this mushroom colored Maori wool, and I just need just a little bit. If it helps, you can straighten it out to get a good twist on this. And I'm just holding and twisting. I'm going to work it all the way down and then all the way back up. Of course, turn and felt. If you're more comfortable using a single needle, by all means, you can do that too. I'm pretty addicted to my double pen tool right here. If you want it to be a little bit thicker, and just add another little twist of wool, tightly wrap it on there, and then felt. So we're going to do that to the other side, and just keep in mind that you still want a little bit of this wire to be exposed so that you have room to twist. If it gets a little short, you know, you can manage. You don't need too much of it when you're going to wrap it around, wrap it onto the crown. And you can always add another little bit of wire. So those could be a little bit firmer, but you'll also be, you know, you'll be working them in a little while, so you'll continue to work them until they're firm. So we will do the tops of these. Just want a little bit of your base color, and you could also Feel free to blend a couple of colors if you wanted to give it like a cool effect. And I've got my handy double pen tool, and I've got a 38 spiral, and we're going to felt the top. I've also got the Clover multi-tool, which is one of my favorites. Not everybody likes it, but I really like it for making flat things. So I'm starting the mushroom top, and I'm just gonna go around in a little circle, peel it up, turn it over, and do this just a couple of times. Mostly concentrating on the inside. So I like to flip it over, and this is how I'm going to put my Nepps on. I want to just sprinkle some Nepps. These ones are nice and hairy. Got a lot of interest. If you find that you need to, you could put the very tiniest little fiber over it, just the merest tiniest bit. So this is the whole secret of applying Nepps. There we go. That's it. And now you use your multi-tool from the back side. And as you do this, you just keep going in your little circle, and you're just gonna do this a little bit, be pretty forceful with it. You want this to penetrate all the way through and grab onto those little hairy Nepps and hold them fast in the fiber. Some will pop off, they always do. But you can see that they are pretty much stuck. If you do try to go from the front, you can do it from this point a little bit. You might get one or two stuck inside of your tool, and if that happens, just peel back your guard, take another little needle, and you can pull them out. There's always one or two that do that. But even going from the front at this point, you can. If you feel like you need to get around those little edges and just grab onto those whatever stray ones that have run away, you can also peel off the strays. There's always some, like even when you attach it, there'll be a couple that'll be hanging on. So I have my Nepps now, and I'm gonna take this little cap, just place your mushroom in the center. I've left the core of the mushroom pretty small because most of this is gonna come from the colored cap. So I'm just gonna bring this inward. Just kind of grabbing it with my felting needles and guiding that cap inwards. Pick it up, turn it over, or turn it. Keep turning it so that you're getting a good attachment. I'm gonna go to this one. And the more that you needle felt the mushroom, the more that it'll compress smaller and smaller. Even gonna bring in the multi-tool. It's not quite ready for that. I want it to be a little bit more compressed. It's getting stuck in the wire. You can tell where your wire is, so when you feel that wire under there, just kind of back out and kind of like, re-guide your needles so that you're not hitting that wire all the time. It's annoying when you have to hit it. I'm just kind of guiding all this towards the center. On these tiny little mushrooms, I don't really bother with working on the undercarriage of the mushroom. I just let it kind of hang out there because it's going to be really small and kind of far away. You can totally, if you have a way that you like to do mushrooms, you can totally do them that way. We've got our first mushroom. Pretty good. Move around on your paddle because you'll start a hole, which I almost always do. Pretty aggressive on the foam. This technique with the multi-tool and the felting wool does work best, I feel, on the foam, but I couldn't penetrate it on the felt pad. So, but you can, if you have a different felting pad, just keep that in mind, that if you're having problems, so you might be that you can't penetrate the foam. Going in a little circle, peel it up. I'm just gonna go right to the sprinkling. This is a really big one, so I'm gonna avoid him. I just put. You can also do them so that they come out in more of a little circle. Just kind of arrange them and turn them over and felt them from the back. I'm gonna put a little bit. Center your mushroom and just bring in all the edges of your wool. So you could do some finishing single needle up here on top, but then you're pretty much done. So another option for mushrooms would be these kind of mushrooms, which are very similar, just have a little bit more of the pointed style to them. And these ones are made from the core and got some different colors of fiber over here, the gold and this orangey color, pumpkin-y color, and then this marigold kind of color. And you could either do a stem in just core or a stem in core and cocoa. So you're going to take your other half of your floral wire and then just do that same kind of little spiral bend. Just like this. Get that floral tape kind of all squished down just like that. And start the top of your mushroom. So this one, instead of kind of putting it on its head so much and felting it from underneath to make it flat, I'm going to do it from the side, just like this. I want my underneath core shape to be kind of reminiscent of the shape I'm going for overall, the cone shape. I just want to kind of get it stuck on there. It's amazing, these little mushrooms don't use very much wool at all, but they're very satisfying to make. Just wrapping at a little bit of an angle to build up my base and then travel a tiny bit up and a tiny bit back. I'm just twisting this in my finger, letting my thumb and forefinger make this little cage to help me wrap that wool onto the stem. And because the floral tape is there, it really helps that wool to grab onto that and to not go anywhere. And then you can just keep turning and keep felting. You can push the stem up a little bit. If you need to, you can kind of poke maybe a single needle. Poke from underneath at the base. Of course, you can make your stems as kind of as fat or as slender as you would like. Just make sure you leave that little bit of a space to wrap around your crown. If your shape gets away, just felt it back into what you'd like it to be. There we go. Okay, let's put the top coat on. So I'm going to use a combination of the orange and the gold. One will be mostly orange with a tiny bit of gold, and the other one will be mostly gold with a tiny bit of orange. I'm going to use the multi-tool just to get me started on this. Just to kind of grab onto those fibers, get them all working together, and then just put this, roll this into place. I think I have a lot. Just try to remember to let this be a Zen activity, so the calmer you are when you're doing it, and just kind of remember to breathe. I think the less likely you are to stab yourself. It's when you want to do things in a hurry and you get kind of too overwhelmed. You're just going to take a couple of deep breaths and just let the mushrooms happen. Kind of using my felting needle to just kind of guide all of those little loose fibers into the mushroom. You can see the more that you work it, the more it's going to take on that little kind of helmet-y shape or cap shape. If you wanted this really pointy, just concentrate felting at the very end of it, the very tip, and kind of turning it as you go, and you can shape it into as pointy as you would like. Kind of smoothing it out. And we'll go ahead and put signature little dots on here. Let's do a swirl and poke just to kind of get it going. I like to felt around the little dot, wherever I'm going. I just kind of swirl it to gather all the fiber, poke it down, swirl it again, and it kind of makes it like almost a little 3D kind of puffiness. cute little mushroom. Go ahead and make the next one. So this one I'm like just folded the little bit of an edge. Since it's such a small little guy, I'm going to fold it and I'm going to just wrap that right around so that I have a little bit of a head start. And if I had extra fiber, instead of pulling it off, I'll just put it in that way. Just by folding that little clean edge. Almost looks like a candy corn mushroom. So if I wanted this one to be super pointy, I would just kind of like keep this little, all this little extra fiber, concentrate into the little point right there. Keep turning it, make sure it doesn't slide off your cap. And put him on his little head. And just felt all the way around, tucking in all those loose fibers. This also helps attach it to the core base more. Just kind of smoothing it out with my fingers, and I'll also show you how I have a little trick for smoothing all these little extra fibers down. Swirl and poke. I think that's one of the first things I ever learned that was like a revelation to me, was the swirl and poke. I like things in groups of 3, so I'll put this little random dot on this side. They're not perfect, but I'll work on them a little bit, and then they'll be fine. So as a finishing touch, I have this little flat iron that is for like your hair, for bangs, but it's a little one. It's just real small. And what I like to do as a finishing touch is to just kind of give my little stems a little bit of a touch with this iron. So I'm just kind of turning it, and that smooths everything out. And you can also do it on top. This one has a little surface where this gets hot as well, so you can kind of, just like it was like a mini iron, you can kind of just smooth it around like that. These two. Especially if you were trying to get a really crisp, like umbrella kind of mushroom where they stood up or laid down, you could really kind of go around and crimp this edge. These could be felted a little bit more. But for demonstration purposes, you can see how this is, where this goes. These are ready to be put on the crown. I had originally like put this little bit of ground on there thinking that I would twist it around the crown and then that would cover the wire, but I think it's better to leave it bare for this crown that we're doing. If you were going to use this in a different application, like you want it to use it as a brooch or a pin or something, or a magnet, you could cover the wire with a little bit of some brown or cocoa color wool, and that would build you a little bit of earth in between there, and you could add like maybe a little bit of the decadence fiber for some grass. You could just needle felt that right in there, just at the base. I just bent it in half and basically built like a little grass stem. So you could do that if you were going to use this in a different kind of application. So these will still work for our crown. I'll just, when I attach them, I might do them in a slightly different way. But now we're almost ready for assembly. On to the next part. An additional element to your crown, you might want to add some apples or pumpkins that would make a nice addition. I've got some kind of apples right here and some pumpkins, and I'm just going to demonstrate how I made these. So the first thing that you start with is a little bit of a wire. I've got, this will make your stem, and this will be good for either apples or pumpkins. You can choose which one you want. To make the stem, you just do a little bit of a twist. You have I'm going to keep a wire sticking out of it. These ones don't have a wire, but I did make some apples with a wire. And then it's a simple wrap around to start either your apple or your pumpkin and build up that little bit of core. So you're just going to kind of wrap it around, form your shape, and then you'll be left with something like this, but with a wire sticking out of it. So let's imagine there's a wire. And then if this was like a little pumpkin, you can just put your little sections of wool. This is a little bit of the Decadence blend, which has both wool and silk in it. You're going to take a fairly strong needle. This is the 38 star twist. And I'm just going to felt this first the bottom and then the top, or vice versa. And you just want to put your little striations. Start with your little striations. If it splits like this, that's fine. Instead of going around the other side, I want you to bring it up and lay it over. And this kind of gives a little bit more of a smoothness to that, and it's a little bit less chunky when you do it this way. So, and then you can take a finer needle and kind of work all the way down. I've got my trusty doubles. The smaller they are, the more easier it is to poke yourself, so just be aware. So if this was my pumpkin, I would probably take my sharp needle and just section it through like this. They're so little that it's not going to take very long to make those little sections. And then continue going. I'm going to take my strong needle, make my little pumpkin section, and then pull me another little bit of wool to lay down. I'm just pulling the tiniest little bit of fiber. I actually like it when that little core shows through. It gives it like some interesting texture. Bring any of the little bit of extras up. And then you can work on this tiny little pumpkin. And you may have some tiny pumpkins or tiny little apples to add to your crown, or other little vegetable things that you've made before. I've got another little section of wool. It's a little bit tedious because I don't usually work this small. Making smaller things is harder than making big things. But some people love to make tiny things. So you just want to work your pumpkin until it stops being like super fiddly and behaves itself. So we've got our little pumpkin. It's got some cute little features on it. You could also make little apples or a little bigger pumpkin. Here's some big apples. This is what they look like with the wire out of them. And you just use this wire to twist around your crown stems or your crown branches and tie it on there. You could also sew it on if you had like a little bit of some strong thread, and you could totally just sew them on as well. You can make your pumpkins as small or as big as you want, and you can make your little apples the same way. You can make them big, small, all different kinds of sizes. For your pumpkins, you could add a little bit of locks to the top of them. This one has a soft stem. I didn't put a wire through this one, but it's the same kind of principle. You just add a little bit of locks and a little bit of color to add interest to your pumpkin. You could maybe add a little leaf to your apple. That would be super cute. So whatever you like. Before we start assembling our crown, we're going to talk about fairy lights. This is an option that you can do for your crown or not. It just adds a little bit of something to it. And I'm going to show you how you can take a bare wire fairy light and then turn it into something that's a little bit more woodland themed, where it's all covered and it's not really felted, it's just kind of wrapped. Just takes a little patience and a little time. This is how they look on the crown. They're very, very subtle, very muted in there. Kind of have to look to see them, but they're in there, and the battery pack is really small. It has little watch batteries in here, and it's hiding just at the back of the crown. So, and it's got a little bit of it's got an off and on switch, so it can turn off and on. And I'm going to show you how to make these covered fairy lights. So this one is a short one. I believe it's like 48 inches long. It might say 4 feet of fairy lights. Whereas this one is a 6.5 foot fairy light, which you can use. You just have to kind of go back and around on the crown, but it's gonna take up a lot of space on that crown. So I'm gonna show you how to do it with the smaller one. And I have these locks here, and I have a little bit of silk hanky. And what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to pick out your locks and just kind of shred them apart so that they're a little bit loose, but not totally loose. And we're gonna take, like, this is a good little chunk right here. And I wanna start at where the base of my lights are, because even though there's no lights on here, this is just the wire. I'm just gonna gently wrap these all the way around. And I'm using that kind of like the fact that they're all kind of connected, but not really connected. So as you run out or they get small, you can just pick up a different color. I'm gonna add some of these really pretty rusty colored ones because they're very fall. And I'm just gonna slightly overlap them with that. We're gonna get rid of that one. Overlap a little bit, and then just continue your wrap with the locks. And don't worry about these touching these lights. These LED lights are super cool. They don't put off heat at all. And as long as you don't bend the wire or break the wire, they will last for a long time. They run a long time on these batteries. I think I have an older crown that's almost going on like 1.5 years, and I haven't had to change the battery out yet. I'll just put a little section of orange on here, and move to another little bit of green. This is the more webby your locks are, like if they're a little bit stuck together, this is actually perfect for this project. Don't want them too thick because I still want those lights to shine through. There's a light like right here. I'm going to just put it on briefly to show you how it shines through. See how you can still really see that. So don't worry that you have to expose the lights because they'll find their way through. Put a little bit more orange on here. Just kind of fan these out just a little bit and then just wrap. Once we get this all wrapped, I'm going to come back through. You could come back through with a little bit of ribbon or yarn would be good for this, or I'm going to use silk hanky to kind of hold these locks in place and give it a little bit more integrity, I guess is a good word, to keep it from feeling like these locks are just going to fall off at any second. Once again, it's one of those things that's worth taking your time with and just feeling it out and making sure that you get these on here. So I'm just going to come all the way to the end, and I'm going to kind of wrap that little bit of the very tip of it pretty well, just because I want that one to be very well covered, because if it's going to slip off somewhere, it'll be at the end and at the beginning. So now I'm going to show you how to take this silk hanky and just take one little bit of it, one little layer. And these have kind of they're called a hanky because they have that kind of shape, right? So what you want to do is just stretch that shape until you have like a long section. And then go back, find your beginning again. The other end of the cord. This is looking so pretty. I can't wait to put this on the crown. So pretty. So fine, I've lost a little bit of the top of this is or the base of it is not quite covered, but I'll come back and I'll cover that a little bit. So I'm just gonna, if the silk hanky can get a little bit out of control, a little bit crazy, so I'm gonna cut part of it, because it's one of those things that if there's one strand just hanging on to you, it will follow you and pull things around and mess things up. So okay, so I've got my little collection of silk right here, and if you use a contrasting color, like this one's the olive color, but you could also use a copper one, or Bordeaux would be pretty. Any of the silk hankies, and just draw them out. I'm holding firm to my lights while I draw it, and I want it to have that kind of wispy, kind of like almost a cobweb, little fairy tale moss kind of thing going on right here. So cute. But this is almost acting like a little bit of a binder to hold these locks in place without anything too harsh, like having to put glue on it or felt around that delicate wire that we don't want to crush. So I'm just going to take another little section of the hanky, cobweb that out, find where I left off, okay, and then start again, just like a little bit of an overlap right here, just to make sure that you're getting it on there. Silk is very strong. It's, even though this stuff is really thin, it doesn't look very strong, but it really is. That's what keeps this, it'll keep these locks on really well. And if you want it to be a thinner kind of spread out, more cobwebby, just can do that. It just takes a little bit of time. Alright, so make sure to test your lights to see if they come back on like they're supposed to. And that is wool and silk wrapped fairy lights. Super easy, y'all. So I'm going to show you how to measure the wire to make the crown and to fit on your head, and how to braid it. It's pretty simple. I have a measuring tape here, but honestly I've just been taking this wire. This is a raffia covered floral wire that I got in the floral section of most craft stores. So I've just been taking it and I kind of measure around my head, and I can tell you that my head is approximately 24 inches, and I'm measuring it from, I'm not going to wear it like right here, but this gives me a little bit of extra room, wiggle room. So I just want to take that off. And then without measuring it again, I'm just going to double that length. So I'm going to double this part. So I'm just going to measure this. I'm going to come all the way to the end and then loop back around so that I have 3 strands. I forget how much that there is in one of these rolls, but I believe you can make about 3 crowns. And then I'm just gonna cut this off. It's pretty tough stuff. You do want to leave a loop on one end, but you want to, you know, make this loop about 1 inch or 1.5 inches long. It doesn't need to be super long. This is just going to be where you hook your hook into. And then I'm going to take the one end of this and then tightly twist it around the very end. And you might need your pliers to push that down because it's pretty tough. Just to get that nice and squished in there. So then I have this mass of unruly wire right here that's going everywhere, and this end I do want to cut. So I have the other loop end. I am going to cut that. So kind of straighten your raffia wires as best you can. So you just want to braid them. If it helps to have a friend hold it, you can do that. You can, if you need somebody to hold it, you can have them hold it. But this is just a simple 3-strand braid. It's over the center and then continuously over the center. You don't have to worry about how tight it is or how it looks right now, because we're gonna pull on it and mess with it quite a bit. So it's not really gonna come apart as you work. You just kind of want to make sure that you're getting your over and under kind of thing. It is awkward because it is pretty stiff. That's good because it makes a very sturdy crown when you're finished. So as you get to the end, you're gonna kind of leave one of these is going to be your hook that you'll use to hook into the other side, and then the other two you can kind of terminate it and wrap around. So I'm just going to pick a direction and finish wrapping. Once again, I'll grab my pliers. And then this part will become my hook. So you kind of just want to tug on the crown, tug in different places until you get like kind of an evenness to the whole thing. It takes a little bit of practice. Just kind of zhuzh it until everything looks a little bit even. Whoops. The thicknesses and the widths are all similar. So I'm kind of going for a wide part in the center and then a narrower part towards the end. You can push your hook back. This will be and just kind of shape your crown into the circle. At this point, you can use your own head to see if it fits. So looks like it's not going to be too bad. And then now it's fitting more like on the top of my crown than like around my middle of my forehead, which is just what we want. So the wires are approximately anywhere from 22 to 24, which is your basic like hat size. If you're worried about it, you can make it a little longer. This is pretty adjustable back here too. So you have your little hook, which is adjustable. You could bend that farther in or even bend this hook to make it shorter. So this is how you braid the crown. It's almost time to assemble our flower crown, and I'm just going to grab some ribbons to hang off the back and to give this hook a little bit of something to cover it. And I want to measure my ribbons for the back. I won't put them on yet, but we'll give them a measure. There's all this lovely sari ribbon, which I just think is amazing. So I have like about a 2-foot doubled over strand, so it's kind of long and then just doubled over. You just want it to be very nice and full of, long enough. I'm going to do about 3 or 4 of these little strands. If you can avoid cutting, like having one of the seams in the middle, then it'll be less likely that it'll come apart. And this will give our fall crown some pizzazz at the end. So if you have all these, you just want to grab all these loose like little strands. They'll kind of come off in a little mass, and you can just throw those away so that they're not in the way. It'll shed a little bit, but once you kind of pull off the main ones, you shouldn't have too much of a problem. So we'll just pull off all these little stringy bits. And we'll set these aside, and we're gonna show you I've cut a little tiny bit of a leftover of this one. And I just want to wrap this stem because this tends to fray. The very end of the wire will fray a little bit. So I just want to put a little bit of glue, and I'm just going to work all the way down. I'm going to take my little bit of ribbon, flatten it out. I'm just going to wrap. So just twist your ribbon around the end. I'm going to come back through. Just keep it flat. And turn that at an angle to cover all of the glue. And this will be your little hook to hook in there, to hook into your loop. And then later we'll come back and attach our ribbons that hang down. But so that they're not in our way right now, we just cut them and now we have them put aside. So let's get to choosing what we want to go on our crown. We have all these cool things that we made. We're definitely gonna put our fairy lights on. We're gonna choose a pumpkin to put on here. The mushrooms, got this little mushroom. We'll put this mushroom on there. How about a little apple? Maybe a green apple for interest. Maybe both. Maybe we'll see if we're gonna keep all those. And then we've got all these other things for another crown, so you can just put, you know, whatever you're not putting on there. We've got our flower that we made. So this one, just that little bit of glue. We're not going to use too much hot glue in this project, but we are going to use it just to add a little bit of stability because we don't want things flopping around too much on our head. So this just gives your flower that little bit of stability. I'm going to just pinch it. Got our flower. Let's get a couple of more flowers. That one's really stuck in there. This one's good. And here's another little loose one. So we'll do these little flowers and then we'll see what kind of leaves we want. I feel like we have so many cool things to go. When I start to build the crown, like I said, I want the center to be high and the back end to be small. We also might need another little bit of ribbon to attach our battery pack to. So I'm just gonna play around. I don't know how it's gonna get assembled because every time I do one of these things, it's different. So let's put our fairy lights on first. And I'm gonna unhook this. So I want the fairy lights to be hidden just slightly in the back. You can open these battery packs and replace the batteries. You know, these can come out. So don't want to permanently like super attach this. I just want it to be loosely attached. So in theory, if you needed to change the battery, you know, you could. So I'm just gonna attach this little bit of ribbon, a little spot of glue on here. It's gonna hold the ribbon on. Put my battery pack right here. And I'm just gonna wrap this little battery pack in here. It's not going to completely disguise the fact that these are so tiny and lightweight. They're amazing. So I just want it to be snug in there. I'm kind of pulling it snug and I'm going to put a little bit of glue right there and bring that tail end back up over here. So if you ever needed to change this out, you could take that off and then slide this out and change the battery, because it's actually not, other than the ribbon wrapping it, that's the only thing that's holding it in there. Okay, so I just want to take this and gently wrap it around my crown. I'm going to kind of go, if it helps to keep this a little bit flat for you, it might be easier to see. But because we're going to put so many things on here, I'm not going to really worry about whether or not, I'm not going to go through the loops of the crown or anything. I just want it to be wrapped just real gentle over here. We're going to go all the way to the end. When we do come through, where silk, man, the silk. I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to cut that. So when I do go through the end, I've just wrapped it around the end, and now I'm going to go back along. We're just going to trust the process. Go all the way around, and then you're just going to tuck that little, wherever it ends, just tuck it back in. So I made it all the way back around. And hook your little crown up, and I'm going to turn the lights on just to make sure they work again, and to make sure that I didn't cover them up with my finger. There they go. If that was the end of our project, this would be super cool, just like it is, but we're going to add more stuff because we are extra. So now we can take the things that we have, and, or do y'all like things even? Do you like things piled onto one side? You know, however you like it, you can space everything out how you like it. And because we have these little wires, these handy little wires, I think I'm going to put fruit on one side and maybe put the mushrooms kind of scattered throughout. But you can see how it's kind of coming together. I'm going to kind of start with the biggest things first. I think I'm going to put this flower over here. And we're not going to worry about permanently attaching anything just quite yet. I just want to thread things through in a couple places and see how I like it. Because this will be totally, it's totally up to the eye of the artist, really. However you want it to be done. So, I've got that one right there, like a little pumpkin right there. Gonna be a whole Harvest Queen thing going on. Okay, so when you decide where you're going to put, say, a mushroom, I'm going to put it kind of just a little bit left of the right of the center or left of the center, depending on how you're holding it. And I'm going to shove my mushroom through, kind of get him snugged up against that little branch right here, twist it around, and then shove him through the other side. Don't be worried about hurting it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to bend it, but it'll pop back into shape. You can just, so I have him just like this. I would say once you put these mushrooms on, you're not going to want to take them off because they're a little bit of a pain in the butt to get them on. If you make individual mushrooms, then you can just place your mushrooms where you will, and then you won't have that problem. I think I'm going to put this guy over here. Every time you make one, it just always comes out different. So fun. So just to give you an idea of, this is how it looks. The wires coming over the branch. I'm not getting any of those, the light fixture part in there. I want to do that. I want to kind of avoid wrapping extra stuff on there, but I'm just wrapping those. There's just a simple twist around. Now later you can come through and put a little bit of some some wool around here, or even another little bit of lock or a little bit of a leaf. If you want these to, if you feel like these are not stable enough, this is where I would kind of, you know, put your hot glue right here to make them stable. These are pretty tough because it's 20 gauge wire. So, and how many Nepps can I take off? Let's see, one more. So I've got these little guys going on. Let's give them a little flower buddy over here. So I'm just gonna thread a flower through. So what do I do with this extra wire? First of all, I'm gonna cut off this one that annoys me so. I'm gonna take that wire and find a place to thread it through again, and then just wrap it. It's a little finicky. It's getting caught. It gets caught up on all those little pieces and stuff that you have, the little locks and things. So have just a tiny bit of patience. Find the end of that wire, thread it through, pull it snug, and then if there's some extra, you can just cut that off. This is when I like to test my lights to make sure I didn't cut anything important, because that's a sad time, let me tell you. All right, we got a flower attached. I've got this. I've got a needle and some thread. So I just put that double thread through my needle and made this little loop. And then this is so that I don't have a wire coming out of this pumpkin, because this was made for just a little bit something different. But what I do have is now I can tie this string onto my pumpkin thread. And this is like a strong quilting thread, so it is not going to go anywhere. And then now when I do decide where I'm going to put that pumpkin, I can attach it. I think he's going to go right here. So I'm just kind of going around, just as if this was the wire, but instead I'm just going around one of the wires of the branch. I'm just going to go through the base of that pumpkin a couple times. So, got that. I've got this just like this. It's pretty well on there. I'm going to give it a little bit of a, just tie it off. Like I said, if I was worried, super worried about it, that's another great place for a little dash of hot glue, but I don't think it's necessary. I think he'll be right there. So if we wanted to, we could rearrange our flower. I like you right there. I think I'm gonna wrap this one. This is one of those things that if you think about it too long, you will never get started. You just have to kind of go for it, and it'll turn out really cute no matter what you do. Just want a little cluster of flowers right here. So I'm just kind of, you can feel your little braid and just thread your wires through and wrap around one of them little braids. I'm gonna go, this is my light wire right here. So I'm gonna go under that light wire and try to not wrap too much of that in there. You can even go around the base of the flower to kind of hold it in the place that you want. And I'm just going to give that a little twist and cut off this extra bit of wire. I think I want one more little flower. What do we think, y'all? Should it go right here? Should it go back here? Oh, that's cool. Let's put those three right there. I'm just wrapping it around the base, threading it back through a couple times. put our little fruit on here. This one has a short stem, so he can just go hang out right here. Actually just gonna wrap that right around the base of that apple. Just like that. So we've got the apples, the mushrooms, I'm gonna put the other little bit of another apple over here. So we have some fruit hanging out. It's a harvest theme after all. So I just want to wrap a couple times around the base and then thread that back through somewhere. You can even, like, if you have a lot of extra wire, you could even take like a toothpick or a skewer and curl the ends of these little wires to look like little bits of grapevine. For that matter, if you have little curly cues of grapevine that you want to put on here, or little pine cones, you know, any little, I made a little curl with the end of that wire. You could do that. So now let's put some leaves on here. So I've got some harvesty leaves. You know, like I said before, the number of leaves is totally up to you. I like these ones that have, you know, bright colors. So I've got like four of these leaves. Let's get a couple of green ones. Put those in there. Look, that'll be really cool. All right, so I'm gonna put a leaf right here at the base of this mushroom. And that'll be another place to do the little grapevine skewer. So I'm just gonna wrap that right around there. Have that sticking out just like that. I usually like to put a couple of leaves back towards the battery pack so that it gets a little bit hidden. Even more so because it's not really showing at all. I'm going to kind of alternate like a fall leaf, a green leaf, and a fall leaf, and a green leaf. Got this one. I'm trying to make sure that the pretty side of the pre-felt is up there, but honestly they both look so cool. You know, you can purposely turn them whichever way you want, and then of course as you wear them they're gonna kind of, you know, they might turn on their own or get oriented in different ways if you move something differently, so it won't matter. Both sides are nice. So these guys, like, I don't like how they're moving around, so let's just stick a little bit of hot glue right there and kind of immobilize them. And kind of keep it up there while it dries. I've got some little bits of fluff that I am going to just stick right there to cover that where I put that hot glue at. And you can just pinch it on. This purple and green and orange and yellow, these are just super happy fall colors. I feel like they go together really well. A little bit of red here and there, burgundy, just gives it such a nice fall feeling. I'm not that fond of this ribbon right here, so I'm gonna use a couple of flowers to cover that. Just kind of wrap this one around the end. That one I'm gonna attach it right up here. We'll just bend it to where we need it to go because I didn't want to attach it to the battery pack. And then once again curl the little tail of the wire. think we're just about ready to go to the Renaissance Fair, y'all. Look at this. Super fun. You can bend your little mushrooms, give them kind of like, you know, a living vibe, so to speak. Turn your little lights on. Well, I think we definitely have enough stuff on there. I don't know if I would put any more. We maybe could have used a little less, but I don't know. Let's try it on and see how it looks. Oh, we got to put these ribbons on. So I've got my little collection of ribbons, and I'm just gonna find the center of them and just bring them through, make a little loop, draw them through. And this is just an added interest. I've got kind of 4 ribbons, so I'll put this one through the hook. I hope to see a lot of really cool fall crowns out there. Can't wait to see what you can do with this. Of course, these can be made for children or for you. All right. And just kind of zhuzh it until it fits on your head. So bendable. If you don't have fairy lights, you might be wondering what to do and how to do it. Because the fairy lights do take up a lot of the space and they fill in a lot of the gaps that you have. But if you don't have fairy lights or you don't want to make one with fairy lights, this one doesn't have any fairy lights, and I'll show you how I did that briefly. So it's pretty easy. I've got my crown braid and I'm gonna lay it flat, and what you do is you would kind of pick out the mushrooms that you're gonna use for that, and you have just a few extra things. You might have some locks, some Sherwood decadence fiber, this is ground, some cocoa for the ground, and then some little locks like for decorations and things like that. So I would, you know, space out your mushrooms however you're gonna have them, have your groupings, and then on each little grouping, I'm gonna demonstrate right in the center of it because that'll be the easiest. So I'm gonna kind of make the center of my crown kind of wide, and I'm gonna wrap my first little mushroom around there. Just poke it back through. And by doing that, I already have that wool on there. So that is good. And you also kind of see more of the, grapevine or more of the raffia covered wire underneath, which is really cool. So I would just kind of find a little bit of some locks that I liked and maybe a little bit of grouping, and I would either needle felt these in. Let's go for a strong needle. I would needle felt these to that little bit of wool that I have up there. This kind of is going to take more time. Now, if you didn't want to do that and you wanted a little bit of a shortcut, I'm not going to judge because I've done this before, is I would glue it on, honestly. I would put all your little needle felted mushrooms on here, put your leaves on here, but if you wanted to come back and put little bits of this wool around the fiber or around the braid, you would, you know, take it, find the center of that, kind of an approximate center of your locks, and what you're going to do is just put a little dab of the hot glue, bring it through there without kind of burning yourself, which is hard, and then just pinch it around there. Once it grabs onto there, you have all these like free hanging locks that you can work with. So you have these little free hanging locks that'll cover any in little between spaces. You've got your little places to wrap, and then you can just continue down the line and add little bits of wool or felt little bits of wool in there, or hot glue them on. And eventually you'll have this. I did a kind of a combination of both. So where I put some of the hot glue is at the base behind here just to hold it on there and to keep it stable. So that's just something to keep in mind, to keep this stability so it doesn't rock back and forth like that. Then you just kind of bend it over, put the hot glue right here, bend it back, and it'll hold it on there. I hope you have fun making all of these Harvest fairy crowns, and they're going to be so fun. I can't wait to see what everybody comes up with and all the little things that you make with them and how they come together for you. So have fun with mushrooms, fairy lights, flowers, pumpkins, apples. You know, go crazy, y'all.